a sample approach to good communication. Now, the best thing I have noticed in relationship communication, in teaching people about it and getting them to work on it, is controlling the state that you're in when you're going to communicate, especially important details, especially important things. So maybe if you have to talk about a topic that tends to trigger your partner, if you have to talk about a topic that you feel triggered about as very sensitive to you, if you have to bring up something that maybe they get defensive about or you get defensive about, any of those things, it's very important to set a good regulation state for yourself before you get into this. This is something that I think as human beings, we completely ignore or invalidate. And so what we're so good at is reacting. So the moment it's really funny. I used to date this girl who WhatsApp, I don't know if a lot of you use WhatsApp, but it gives you the ability to delete your messages, right? And so I was dating this girl, very sweet. And she was like a very authentic person, but she was very reactive. And so if I communicated anything or said anything via WhatsApp, I'd be working. I use WhatsApp as work as well. So it's open on my laptop, but I'm not like texting her. So it shows you you're online and whatever else, but you're not like reading my messages. And she would, like, if I said something or asked something, she'd send a barrage of messages of like saying, you know, oh, I'm not comfortable with this, blah, blah, blah. I didn't like this, whatever. Or like, you're doing this as XYZ. And I'd be working. And she'd see that I hadn't read the message. And so she'd just delete those messages afterwards. And I'd come back and I'd be ready to have conversation because I'd take a break from work or something. And I'd see like 6 deleted messages after my message. And I'm like, what just happened here? Like, what did you say? I have no idea what went on. And she's like, oh, I deleted my message. I was like, why did you delete your messages? So she said, I'm not sure if that's what I wanted to say. So I said, okay, so what was your thought here? She said, I put out those messages, I deleted them, I saved the text. I'll sit with myself and realize if this is what I want to say, and then I'll say it back to you again later. So I said, interesting. Wouldn't it be better if you maybe just held off on it at the start and just sat with it anyway, thought about if that's what you want to say, and then just say it once and for all later on, instead of saying it, deleting it, and then re-saying it again. And the point of like why I brought that up is that's such a good example for how, if we're not in regulation of how we really feel, we'll just vomit what it is we're feeling at that time, and that'll completely skew the way communication goes. So it is so important, especially when you're having important conversation, especially when, like I said, even if your partner is just upset, not having a good day, and you just want to hold space, so important to be in a space for ourselves that's grounded or regulated. So important. This completely changes how you react. How you react and grounding yourself in that completely changes what they feel safe to say to you, how they feel safe to show up. So take, for example, if we're going to have a really intense conversation about something, I'm like, okay, we need to talk about the kids, let's say, for example. And so we're going to sit down to talk about the kids. I already have my opinion of that. You fucked up doing this, blah, blah, blah. And like the kid basically has learned this habit from you or something else, God knows what else. I'm already triggered a challenge in this conversation. You're getting ready to sit down and have this conversation with me. Instead of me now saying to you, okay, this is what I think the problem is. I think the child has learned this particular habit, which is what we really want to correct. Instead, what do? I blame or shame you. And so now I'm like, it's your fault. Like, you did this thing. Couldn't you have thought twice before you did blah, blah, blah. When you lead from your ego and you're dysregulated, you're most often trying to attack the partner. You're trying to judge, shame, or like I said, to please them, any different one based on your coping mechanism. But it's not going to lead to the constructive outcome you want, right? So you're ultimately going to react to them, blame them. Now they get aggravated, so they're saying shit back to you. Both of you are now in this little wrestling match where you don't get at all to the baseline of what it is you really want to communicate about. So the number one thing you need to do, especially if you tend to flirt with the anxious attachment side, if that's you, the number one thing you need to do is to regulate yourself. It's funny, but you might even need these moments of regulation when your partner comes and tells you really good news. Because again, if we're on the anxious attachment side, we'll tend to get attached to like what that means about us or what it means for us, or how close we think we are. And we can tend to like over fantasize of like what that really means rather than what it actually is in that particular moment. If you're an avoidant, why regulation is so good for you in these moments is because it doesn't let you feel unsafe. Now, the reason avoidants don't like conflict is because internally they don't feel safe with high emotional reactivity and high like emotional engagement. Why? Because this is a representation of their childhood in some way. Maybe they either had a house that was very emotionally reactive. Most likely it was that their own emotions were shamed, judged, or suppressed when they were kids. And so even if they wanted to run up to daddy or mommy with joy, even that was somewhere suppressed or shut off, or there was no room for it. Maybe they had a house that was completely like emotionless in some sense, where everybody was very staccato. Everybody just had a principle. You just do this, blah, blah, blah. Emotions are not really like, those are meant for girls, or those aren't like meant for like sissies or any of that. Could be a whole spectrum, but that whole spectrum makes them feel emotions are unsafe. So if an avoidant is dysregulated, they're going to run away. That's the number one thing they're going to do. If you have a partner who's an avoidant, or if you are an avoidant in itself, remember that safety through regulation allows for better communication, because you're making the person feel, or you are feeling safe enough to say, this is not scary for me. This is not damaging for me, to actually show up, to witness this, to take space here. So for both people, anxious or avoidant, when you're dysregulated, intense communication or like conflict can feel scary, because on one side it makes you feel like you're going to be abandoned, on the other side it makes you feel like it's going to be too emotionally intense for you. So either end, you need to be regulated to have good communication.
Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.